As India anticipates the Union budget for the fiscal year 2024-2025, the country's eyes are fixed on the government's economic roadmap. This budget is particularly significant as it follows the interim budget announced on February 1st, 2024, marking this the first full-fledged budget since the BJP government took charge recently. As the announcement of the Union budget approaches round the corner, we ran through a survey catching people's expectations and priorities. To give you a bit of context, we are looking to understand the needs of a common man and an investor. A common man would expect a reduction in the tax bill or an increase in exemptions, whereas an investor would look for growth reforms or policies such as measures aimed at certain sectors, increase in infrastructure spending, tax changes that may impact their investments, etc. Then, a populist budget would include higher subsidies, a reduction in tax slabs that are intended to directly affect the savings, income, and investments of citizens, whereas a reformative budget focuses on making structural changes to the economy in order to improve its long-term growth and stability. The interim budget, which was announced on 1st of February, set the stage, but now the government must deliver a comprehensive financial plan to build on this foundation that addresses various crucial sectors and meets the expectations of its citizens. While significant announcements were made in the interim budget, like those towards capital expenditure, railways, green growth, and so on and so forth, expectations are high for significant reforms and strategic allocations. And at the helm of it lies several priorities, like the ambitious goal of becoming a 10 trillion economy, boosting rural consumption, and spurring manufacturing spending towards defense, education, healthcare, creating more jobs through welfare schemes, capex push, farmer support are a few to name. So in a nutshell, the Union budget is indeed a complex document that requires balancing multiple priorities. So without any further ado, let's begin. You're watching Informed Investor, an initiative by Equentis. The survey we conducted led to some interesting discoveries. Firstly, we asked participants to put on the hat of an investor, a common man, or both. And as per the result of the survey, about 57% wanted to put on the hat of both a common man and an investor, setting priorities and a strong desire for a well-rounded budget. Speaking from the common man's perspective, people want some relief from the tax burden. This would come in the form of lower tax rates, higher exemption limits, or increased deductions for everyday expenses. A budget that puts more money in people's pocket allows them to save more or spend more, stimulating the economy. Now, from the investor's perspective, economic growth is key for good returns. Investors look for measures that encourage business activity and improve the overall health of the economy. This could include increased infrastructure spending, which creates jobs and improves efficiency, or reforms aimed at specific sectors with high growth potential. Tax changes that benefit investment would also be attractive. To summarize, measures that ease the burden on everyday people while also promoting long-term economic growth would be a win-win for both the common man and the investor. On the flip side, another question stating if people wanted the budget to be a populist or reformative suggested that 61% of the respondents are favoring a reformative budget. In context, a populist budget prioritizes short-term benefits for the public like higher subsidies, which could mean low prices for essential goods or services but can be expensive for the government to maintain. Secondly, a reduction in tax slabs, meaning more money in people's pockets immediately but might not address underlying economic issues. On the other hand, a reformative budget focuses on long-term growth like policies aimed at encouraging business investment, innovation, and infrastructure development. Moreover, improving efficiency like streamlining government processes and investing in education and skill development might not provide immediate relief but can lead to a stronger economy with more jobs and opportunities in the long run. Now, coming to the 61% favoring a reformative budget suggests a desire for sustainable solutions. People might understand that short-term populist measures, while appealing, might not address the root causes of economic issues. They might be looking for a budget that lays the groundwork for a stronger future where everyone benefits from a growing economy. Moving on to the selection of tax regime. The survey finds 59% of respondents preferring the old tax regime. But first, let's understand both the regimes. The old tax regime offers taxpayers to claim deduction, exemption, and allowance with which they can have proper tax planning and save taxes. Despite the high tax rates, there are several strategies to lower tax obligation. Some of the deductions and exemptions under this old tax regime are PPF, ELSS, EPF, life insurance premium, NPS, and exemptions are HRA, LTA, standard deduction, uniform allowance, etc. The only drawbacks are it requires record keeping and investment planning to claim deductions, and filing tax returns could be complex as several calculations are involved. On the other hand, the new tax regime has widened the scope of taxation, offering a simpler tax structure along with lower tax rates as compared to the old regime. However, there are absolutely no deductions or exemptions available apart from the standard deduction of 50,000. So tax saving opportunities are limited. A point to highlight is under the new regime, rebate is allowed up to 25,000. So if you have income of 7 lakhs, your tax outgo will be nil and you will not have to pay any tax up to incomes of 7 lakhs. Okay, moving on, we also listed a couple of initiatives or reforms that we believed the government should prioritize in this union budget, and we asked you to rate it. Let's see your responses. Like every year, regular folks like you and I look forward to the union budget announcement because we're all hoping that the government will lower the taxes we have to pay so we can keep more of our money. In India, taxpayers get a choice between the two tax regimes, the old tax regime and the new regime. We've already discussed this previously, so let's not talk about the old and new tax regime. Most of our survey respondents have been vying for a tax cut, especially the middle class. I mean, it kind of makes sense with the high level of inflation and we witnessed and are still witnessing. And I especially would be thrilled to see some changes. While the Indian economy grew at a world-beating 8.2% in the year 2023-24, consumption has grown at half that pace. A cut in personal tax could boost consumption in the economy. This sentiment is echoed by the India Incorporation too, adding to the urgency to let Indians have more cash in hand and boost consumption demand, which will further propel the economic growth in the country. Hence, any move to leave more disposable income in the hands of individual taxpayers will also boost consumption and make taxpayers happy. Keeping in view the government's intent to simplify and rationalize tax laws and enhance compliance, one may expect a few changes in the upcoming Union Budget 2024 to make the new income tax regime more attractive. Let's keep our fingers crossed. One thing that investors are eager to learn about in the upcoming Union Budget is the potential changes to the capital gains tax structure. Currently, the capital gains tax system in India is quite complicated with different tax rates and holding periods for various types of financial instruments. For example, if you sell real estate held for 24 months or less, it is considered a short-term capital gain. But for listed equities and equity mutual funds, the holding period threshold is just 12 months. Now, let's look at the taxation on equity. Retail investors now own 18.5% of all listed companies. The shift towards equity investments has been driven by the strong performance of the stock market, which has encouraged people to move their savings from fixed deposits and gold into stocks and derivatives. This shift has also significantly boosted government revenues. In 2018, Finance Minister Arun Jaitley introduced a 10% long-term capital gains tax on gains exceeding Rs 1 lakh without offering indexation benefits. This was a notable change from the previous regime established in 2004 by Finance Minister Chidambaram, under which LTCG was exempt from tax, although the securities transaction tax was levied on all transactions in the stock exchanges. Currently, investors face a 15% short-term capital gains tax if they hold listed stocks for less than a year. If you earn long-term capital gains exceeding 1 lakh rupees from selling equity shares or equity-oriented mutual fund units after holding them for more than 12 months, the gains are subject to 10% long-term capital gain tax plus applicable cess. Recently, the Association of Mutual Funds in India has suggested changes to the tax treatment of LTCGs under Section 112A of the Income Tax Act. The proposal includes a 10% tax rate on gains exceeding 2 lakh per year for LTCG on listed equity shares or equity-oriented fund schemes held for over 1 year but less than 3 years. Furthermore, they are promising a full exemption for capital gain tax for assets held for more than 3 years. Many expect the government to introduce amendments that could simplify the system. Next up, wealth tax on the rich. The concept of wealth tax on the super rich is gaining popularity in India as well as globally. In context, wealth tax is imposed on the richest section of the society, The intention of doing so is to bring parity among the taxpayers. However, the wealth tax was abolished in the budget of 2015 as the cost of recovering taxes was more than the benefit derived. As an alternative to the wealth tax, the finance minister introduced a surcharge, which is an additional charge payable on income tax. It is an added tax on the taxpayers having a higher income inflow during a particular financial year. The image on your screen shows the amount of surcharge payable on the income tax amount for the richer sections of the society. The reason for a dedicated wealth tax is gaining popularity on the back of the widening income gap in India. In fact, according to the Oxfam report, 5% of Indians own more than 60% of the country's wealth, while the bottom 50% of the population possess only 3% of the wealth. Overall, a wealth tax on the rich is a complex issue with strong arguments on both sides. The survey we conducted had a stance of important on wealth tax. Needless to say, one thing for sure is that there is growing inequality not just in India but globally too, and this needs to be addressed. Moving on to the rural economy. India is an agriculture country with 70% of the workforce or two-thirds of the population residing in rural areas. A billion Indians earn their bread and butter from agriculture activities and allied products. In fact, the rural economy contributes 46% towards the national income and 25 to 30% of India's GDP. Therefore, it is extremely essential to focus on the growth and development of India's rural economy in our journey to become a 5 trillion or a 10 trillion economy. The pandemic had caused weak demand and put a strain on the livelihood of those in the rural areas. Rising farm input costs and other inflationary pressures have limited the growth in income for the rural economy. If you see the image on the screen, there has been a wide divergence between rural and urban spending after the COVID-19 pandemic. Notably, even the income levels have been drastically affected. Income of the poorest 20% has fallen below the pre-pandemic levels. Additionally, the private final consumption expenditure, which includes purchases made by consumers on items such as food, housing, energy, clothing, health, leisure, education, communication, transport, hotels, etc., have been subdued since COVID. With the rural economy still recovering from the impacts of the pandemic, it is crucial for the government to focus on policies and initiatives that will support the growth and development of the rural economy. This includes measures aimed at boosting demand and private consumption, as well as investing in infrastructure and creating jobs. In fact, during the interim budget, the centre's subsidy bill of the 3Fs, which is food, fertilizer and fuel, fell to a 5-year low of rupees 3.81 lakh crore in fiscal year 25. While there are initiatives currently like the minimum support price MSP for certain crops along with the Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana, Pradhan Mantri Krishi Sinchai Yojana and Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana and few other subsidies, the survey conducted by us wanted straight priorities for boosting rural consumption through farmer support and agri-infrastructure. Next up is the widening of the scope of PLI scheme. The PLI or Production Linked Incentive Scheme introduced in the budget 2021-2022 with an outlay of Rs 1.97 lakh crore was done in 14 sectors. Basically, a scheme that offers financial incentives to companies for incremental sales of products manufactured in India. The main goal is to boost domestic manufacturing, enhance competitiveness, create employment opportunities, thereby reducing imports and increasing exports. So far, the PLI scheme has witnessed investments of over 1.03 lakh crore up until November 2023. And that's not it. It has led to a multiplier effect and generated production sales of 8.61 lakh crore and employment of 6.78 lakh crore. Largest contributions have come from the electronics manufacturing, pharmaceuticals, food processing, and lastly telecom and networking products. While several challenges remain like the cost and effectiveness, making it a level playing field for companies, it has led to a multiplier effect on the economy. The survey results advocating for a wider PLI scheme reflect a positive outlook on its potential to bolster Indian manufacturing. By carefully considering the sectors to be included, tailoring incentives and addressing potential challenges, the government can leverage this program to drive long-term economic growth and create a more robust manufacturing ecosystem. Capital expenditure refers to the funds spent on building assets like roads, ports, and buildings. While it might be tempting to opt for a consumption-driven approach because it delivers quick results, sustainable long-term growth demands that we remain committed to an investment-led strategy. Prioritizing capital investments is essential for creating a stronger and a more resilient economy in the future. In fact, most of our survey respondents agree with this perspective. The current government also has demonstrated its dedication to this investment led growth path. In the interim budget for 24-25, they significantly increased the total allocation for capital expenditure by 11.1%, bringing it to an impressive 11.1 lakh crore. We believe that public infrastructure spending should be further increased in fiscal year 24, but it's crucial to do this without compromising on fiscal consolidation. By maintaining a balance, we can ensure that our economic growth is both robust and sustainable. Unemployment is a critical issue that continues to challenge the economic landscape of India. Being the world's most populous nation with 1.45 billion and with a diverse workforce, fluctuations in the unemployment rate have far reaching implications for the country's growth and development. But first, let's look at the data. According to the latest data from the Center for Monitoring Indian Economy, the unemployment rate in India stood at 9.2% in June 2024, the highest since 2008. The survey we conducted laid strong emphasis on job creation through welfare schemes. Public welfare schemes in context can create jobs and employment through different approaches. Let's understand. Providing temporary or permanent employment opportunities in sectors like infrastructure development, rural development, or environmental conservation can prove beneficial. Schemes might offer wage subsidies to incentivize private companies to hire new workers. Training programs can equip individuals with skills needed to secure jobs in growing sectors. Despite the government having welfare schemes like the Mahatma Gandhi Rural Employment Guarantee Act, Pradhan Mantri Rozgar Yojana, Deen Dayal Upadhyaya Gramin Kaushalya Yojana, the unemployment stands at the highest at 9.2%. As mentioned earlier, the government has to balance its other priorities as well. While other areas like capex, defense, education, and healthcare are crucial, job creation through public welfare schemes shouldn't be seen as an isolated expense. When designed and implemented effectively, such schemes can contribute to economic growth, infrastructure development, and social stability, which ultimately benefits other government priorities and fosters a more prosperous nation. Finding the right balance between these competing priorities is an ongoing challenge for policymakers, and public surveys like yours can provide valuable insights into the public priorities. Another priority stated in the survey was towards environmental sustainability, which aligns with a growing global concern. But what are the key areas of environmental sustainability? Transitioning from fossil fuels to clean energy sources like solar, wind, and hydropower is crucial for reducing carbon emissions and combating climate change. And the government has set an ambitious target to produce 500 gigawatts of renewable energy by 2030. Additionally, India wishes to achieve a net zero emissions by 2070. Promoting electric vehicles, public transport systems, and a cleaner fuels can significantly reduce air pollution in cities. Different government initiatives like the FAME, which is faster adoption and manufacturing of electric vehicles, and electric mobility promotion scheme, are aimed at the adoption of EVs in the country, along with the necessary support for developing and manufacturing electric vehicles in India. The other key areas of environmental sustainability are waste management, sustainable agriculture, forest conservation. While the government has introduced specific initiatives, our respondents highlighted the public's desire for a stronger focus on environmental sustainability. By continuing and expanding on existing initiatives, addressing challenges, and fostering public private partnerships, the government can make significant strides towards a more sustainable future for India. As we mentioned, the government has numerous responsibilities, from building roads to providing subsidies. To fund these activities, they rely on income from taxes, dividends, and other sources. However, our expenses often exceed our income. Simply put, a fiscal deficit represents the gap between the government's total spending and its revenue during a specific period, typically a fiscal year. This metric shows how much more money a government is spending compared to what it's earning over that particular time frame. The government's fiscal deficit is a crucial indicator of the financial health and management of the nation's public finances. It essentially acts as a gauge to assess how effectively a government is handling of its budget and whether it's living within its financial means. Reducing the fiscal deficit is essential because a large deficit indicates that the country isn't managing its income and expenses effectively. For the current fiscal year, the fiscal deficit is expected to settle at 5.8%, outperforming the budget estimate of 5.9%. Looking ahead, the Union government aims to achieve a fiscal deficit of 5.1% for fiscal year 25 and further bring it down to 4.5%. Overall, the government has done a fantastic job managing its finances and reducing the fiscal deficit. The interim budget of 2024-25 firmly conveys the government's commitment to fiscal consolidation goals set against a backdrop of healthy economic growth. It's definitely a big positive that the government had remained committed to fiscal consolidation. Now that we've discussed the several priorities, we do understand the government faces a difficult task every year as it presents the union budget. On one hand, there is a need for fiscal prudence, ensuring that the government's finances are managed responsibly. On the other hand, there is a need for pro growth initiatives, measures that will help boost the economy and create jobs. Balancing these two objectives can be a tough task for any government. The government must consider the needs of all citizens, from farmers and small businesses to the middle class and the poor. But with limited resources, it can't satisfy the needs of every single individual. It's a bit like trying to please everyone at a party. You want to make sure everyone has a good time, but you can't make everyone happy all the time. Similarly, the government can't satisfy the needs of every single individual or sector in the budget. It has to make tough choices and prioritize what is best for the country as a whole. In short, the government's job of balancing fiscal prudence and pro growth initiatives in the union budget is a delicate balancing act that requires a lot of skill and expertise. It's not easy to make everyone happy, but it's important that the government tries its best to make sure that the country's finances are in order and that the economy is growing. Having said that, this is me, Rahil Hassan, signing off. Have a great day and stay safe.
Investments in securities market are subject to market risks. Read all the related documents carefully before investing.